Imagine a world where everything you throw away holds a grudge. A discarded sandal, plotting revenge from a landfill. A forgotten umbrella, abandoned on a street corner, slowly gathering a malevolent consciousness. A cracked teacup, left in the back of a cupboard, its resentment hardening over decades. This wasn't a fairy tale. For centuries in Japan, it was a deeply held belief, a terrifying reality that governed an entire culture's relationship with the inanimate world. It was the understanding that on its 100th birthday, an ordinary, everyday object could awaken. It could grow limbs, a face, and a soul, and depending on how you had treated it, it could become your most loyal companion or your most horrifying nightmare. This raises a chilling question for our modern world. In an age of disposable everything, of fast fashion, single-use plastics, and yearly smartphone upgrades, we are creating mountains of discarded objects. We throw things away without a second thought. But what if the old stories were true? What if, buried in our junkyards and forgotten in our attics, there are millions of objects, all silently counting the years, waiting for that 100-year mark to arrive? What happens when their birthday finally comes? Are we, right now, unknowingly creating an army of vengeful spirits, an unseen threat that is about to awaken all at once? The Japanese have a word for these beings: Tsukumogami. The name itself is a mystery box of meaning. Tsukumo can be written to mean 99, representing the moment just before the transformation, the final year of waiting. Gami comes from kami, the divine spirits or gods that, in the Shinto faith, inhabit all things: rocks, rivers, trees, and even the tools we create. So a Tsukumogami is, in essence, an artifact spirit or a tool god. It is the culmination of a century of existence, 100 years of absorbing the energy, the emotions, and the memories of its human owners. Think of it like a spiritual battery. Every time you use a pen, cherish a book, or play a guitar, you are pouring a tiny spark of your own life force into it. After 100 years, that battery is full. And what happens next depends entirely on the charge it holds. Was it an energy of love, care, and respect? Or was it an energy of neglect, abuse, and bitter abandonment? This belief wasn't born from simple superstition. It was a practical philosophy woven into the fabric of society. It emerged from the intersection of Shinto animism, the idea that everything has a spirit, and Buddhist teachings about reincarnation, and the potential for all things to achieve a higher state of being. It was a brilliant, almost subconscious way to encourage a culture of conservation and mindfulness. In an era before mass production, every object was a significant investment of time, resources, and skilled labor. A single kimono could take a family months to create. A well-made sword was the work of a master artisan's lifetime. You didn't just throw these things away. You cared for them, repaired them, and treated them with a reverence that we have almost completely lost. The threat of the Tsukumogami was the ultimate deterrent against wastefulness. It taught a simple, powerful lesson: take care of your things, or your things will take care of you. The 100-year rule is the absolute core of the legend. Why 100? In Japanese culture, the number 100 represents a complete cycle, a point of ultimate transition and power. It's a threshold. An object that endures for a century has proven its worth. It has witnessed generations pass. It has absorbed a lifetime of human drama. It has earned its right to a higher existence. This transformation is not a gentle awakening. It's often depicted as a sudden, dramatic event. The object might split open, revealing an eye. A handle might twist and stretch into a long, spindly arm. It is the moment the inanimate crosses the veil into the world of the living, becoming a yokai, a term for the vast pantheon of supernatural monsters, spirits, and demons in Japanese folklore. And once an object becomes a Tsukumogami, it walks one of two paths. If it was a cherished item, a musical instrument played with passion, a set of tools used with skill, a piece of clothing worn with pride, it might become a benevolent spirit. These Tsukumogami are often mischievous and playful, but ultimately loyal to the family or lineage that cared for them. They might tidy up the house at night, play a soft melody to soothe a crying child, or even use their newfound powers to protect the home from other, more malevolent spirits. They are a reward for a century of respect, but the other path is far darker. This is the fate of objects that were broken and discarded, abused, forgotten, or replaced without a proper sense of gratitude. These Tsukumogami are born of bitterness and a burning desire for revenge. Their transformation is a monstrous one, twisting their original forms into something grotesque and terrifying. They hold a grudge not just against the person who wronged them, but against humanity as a whole. They become agents of chaos, their sole purpose to inflict the pain and neglect they felt for so long. A broken paper screen might develop 100 eyes to spy on people. A forgotten set of prayer beads might strangle a sleeping monk. An old, tattered floor mat might wrap itself around a victim, smothering them in the dust of its own abandonment. The most terrifying manifestation of their collective rage is an event known as the Hyaki Yagyo, or the Night Parade of 100 Demons. Ancient scrolls depict this as a horrifying procession where countless yokai, led by a powerful demon king, storm through the streets of Japan on hot summer nights. And marching in this parade, clattering and shuffling alongside goblin-like oni and seductive fox spirits, are the Tsukumogami. Imagine the sight. A chaotic legion of animated household goods, a terrifying orchestra of the discarded, one-legged umbrellas hopping with cyclopean eyes, lutes with gaping mouths screaming silent curses, haunted scrolls unfurling to reveal demonic faces, and animated suits of armor marching with spectral fire burning inside. To witness this parade was to risk being driven insane or spirited away, never to be seen again. It was the ultimate nightmare of a consumer culture, a physical manifestation of the consequences of throwing things away. It was a warning that what you discard does not simply disappear. It remembers, and it waits. Among the most famous of these marching spirits is the Kasa-obake. Its form is instantly recognizable and deeply unsettling. It is a paper umbrella, but one that has transformed into a bizarre, cyclopean creature. It stands on a single leg, which was once the handle, and hops about with an unnerving gait. Its paper canopy is now a face, dominated by one large, staring eye, and a long, grotesque tongue that lolls from a wide, leering mouth. The Kasa-obake is not typically considered one of the most dangerous Tsukumogami, but it embodies the strange and unpredictable nature of these spirits. It is a trickster delighting in surprising and scaring humans on rainy nights, leaping out from dark alleyways with a sudden, wet lick of its enormous tongue. It is the ghost of every umbrella lost on a bus, left behind in a restaurant, or broken by a gust of wind and angrily thrown in the trash. It is a simple, common object, imbued with just enough life to become an eternal one-eyed nuisance, a constant reminder that even the most mundane items have a breaking point. And when they break, they don't just stop working. They get even. This thirst for vengeance is rooted in a simple, almost elegant principle, a rule of spiritual physics that governs the inanimate world, the rule of 100 years. In Japanese folklore, it's believed that when a tool or object reaches its 100th birthday, it can acquire a soul. It becomes a vessel for a spirit, a living entity. Think of it like a battery slowly, imperceptibly charging over a full century. Every time it's used, every time it's polished, every time it's valued, a tiny spark of spiritual energy or ki is absorbed. For 99 years, it remains just an object. But on the dawn of that 100th year, a critical threshold is crossed. The battery is full. A consciousness flickers to life where none existed before. It is born. But birth is not always a joyous occasion. This awakening is a delicate, pivotal moment. If the object has been well cared for, loved, and respectfully retired, its spirit might be gentle, even lucky. But that's the fairy tale version. The reality is often far darker. The transformation is most often triggered not by a birthday celebration, but by a final profound act of betrayal, being thrown away. Imagine it. For a century you served a family. You were a constant in their lives. You felt the hands of generations. And then one day you're cracked or faded or simply replaced by something newer, shinier. You are cast out, dumped in a landfill, left to rot in an alley. The century of accumulated energy, the nascent soul, doesn't just disappear. It curdles. It twists into something fueled by resentment and a deep, burning sense of injustice. This is the heart of the Tsukumogami's anger. It's a concept deeply tied to the Japanese idea of matanai, a powerful term expressing a deep regret concerning waste. To the Tsukumogami, being discarded isn't just wasteful, it's a mortal insult. Consider the bakazori, a pathetic, almost comical creature. It was once a simple straw sandal, a zori. 4 years it carried its master, through muddy roads and dusty paths. It was worn down, frayed, and eventually its partner was lost. Alone and useless, it was tossed aside without a second thought. but it had served for 100 years. And so, in the filth and darkness where it was left, it changed. 2 tiny arms and 2 tiny legs sprouted from its straw body. A single large eye opened in its center, and a mouth formed, chanting a single maddening refrain over and over into the night. Kararin Korarin Kankarorin, a nonsensical chant that roughly translates to the sound of wooden clogs, a taunt to its former owners, a lament for its lost partner and its own miserable fate. It doesn't attack, doesn't maim, it just annoys. It hops through the house at night, its relentless chanting echoing through the paper walls, a constant, maddening reminder of the small, forgotten things we cast aside. But not all are so harmless. Some objects have a far more intimate, and therefore more terrifying relationship with their owners. Take the Boroborotan. This is the spirit of a tattered futon, a sleeping mat. For 100 years it was the place of dreams and nightmares. It absorbed the sweat of a fever, the tears of heartbreak, the quiet breathing of a century of sleepers. It knew its owner's most vulnerable moments. It was a silent witness to their entire lives. When it becomes old and ragged, stained and torn, it is thrown out. But its spirit, saturated with 100 years of human intimacy, awakens with a terrifying purpose. It doesn't just want to be remembered, it wants to reclaim its place. It will sneak back into its old home, silent and unseen. And as its former master sleeps, the Boroborotan will slither onto them, wrapping itself around their body, pulling tighter and tighter, not with the comfort of a blanket, but with the suffocating embrace of a predator. The victim awakens, paralyzed, gasping for air under the weight of their own discarded bedding, their life being squeezed out by a creature born from their own neglect. This is what makes the Tsukumogami so profoundly unsettling. They are not monsters from some alien dimension or demonic underworld. They are homegrown terrors. Their malice is a direct reflection of our own carelessness. They are not inherently evil. They are driven by a very human-like set of emotions: loneliness, betrayal, and a desperate desire for recognition. They are the ultimate manifestation of out of sight, out of mind coming back to haunt you, quite literally. Their forms often reflect the life they lived and the damage they sustained. A perfect example is the Chōchin-obake, the paper lantern ghost. For 100 years it lit the way, a faithful beacon in the dark. But paper is fragile. Over time it tears. When the lantern is finally discarded, its spirit animates that damage. The long tear down its side splits open, forming a massive gaping mouth. Its single central eye pops open, and it floats through the night, a terrifying, leering face, sometimes breathing fire, a monstrous perversion of its original purpose to provide gentle light. The very flaw that caused it to be thrown away becomes its most terrifying feature. These individual spirits are frightening enough on their own. A hopping sandal, a suffocating blanket, a leering lantern. But the true horror begins when you realize they are not alone. They are part of a vast, unseen community of the discarded. And once a year they gather. They emerge from the trash heaps, the dusty attics, the forgotten corners of the world for a terrifying event known as the Hyaki Yagyo, the night parade of 100 demons. Imagine a street at midnight. Suddenly a sound begins. A clattering, a rustling, a chorus of discordant music. And then they appear. A living river of refused and forgotten relics, flowing through the heart of the city. Kasa-obake hopping on their single legs, bakazori chanting their maddening song, possessed lutes playing a symphony of sorrow, animated suits of armor marching in silent, rusty fury. It is a terrifying, carnivalesque procession of the world's rage, a parade of pure, concentrated resentment. And the rule is simple and absolute. Any human who witnesses this parade will die or be spirited away, erased from existence as if they themselves were nothing more than a piece of trash to be discarded. It is the ultimate revenge of the inanimate, a night where the objects we own rise up to remind us that nothing is ever truly forgotten, and some things never forgive. So what happens if you find your own front door lies on the path of this ghostly parade? Is there any way to protect yourself? More importantly, is there a way to stop your own belongings from one day rising up and joining the march? The simplest answer, and the one whispered in terrified homes for centuries, is to not be seen. When the sun sets on a night foretold for the parade, you lock your doors. You shutter your windows. You extinguish every lamp. You huddle in the darkness with your family, and you do not, under any circumstances, look outside. The curiosity is a siren's call, a fatal temptation. Folklore is littered with tales of those who dared to peek through a crack in the door, only to be struck down dead on the spot, or worse, to be dragged screaming into the street to join the procession. Some stories say the mere sight of the parade is enough to drive a person hopelessly insane, their mind shattered by the impossible, chittering, clattering legion of vengeful spirits. The Hyakki Yagyo is not a spectacle to be witnessed, it is a force of nature to be survived. For those seeking a more active defense, special paper talismans, known as ofuda, inscribed with the names of gods or powerful sutras, would be pasted onto doors and entryways. These were spiritual wards, a divine do not enter sign for the supernatural world, intended to make a home invisible or repugnant to the passing spirits. But these were merely passive defenses. If the parade truly needed to be confronted, if its path needed to be altered to protect a city or a temple, that task fell to a very specific kind of expert, the onmyoji. Think of them as the mystical scientists and spiritual troubleshooters of ancient Japan, masters of yin and yang, the 5 elements, astronomy, and divination. An onmyoji was a court wizard, a ghostbuster, and a guardian of the cosmic balance all rolled into one. When the Hyakki Yagyo marched, a powerful enough onmyoji was the only human who could stand against it. They could create magical barriers, invoke protective deities, or even use their own spiritual power to disperse the demonic procession, forcing the yokai and Tsukumogami to scatter back to the shadows. The most famous of them all, Abe no Saimai, was a legendary figure whose exploits against all manner of supernatural threats became the stuff of legend. He was the ultimate protector, the one you prayed would be on duty the night the old Geta sandals and broken paper lanterns decided to take a stroll down your street. But all of these methods, hiding, using talismans, calling a mystical exterminator, are reactive. They're what you do when the monsters are already at the door. The deeper wisdom, the true secret to preventing the rise of the Tsukumogami, lies not in defense, but in prevention. It's rooted in a profound cultural and spiritual concept, a single word that explains everything: matanai. Directly translated, matanai means something like wasteful, but that's a pale, hollow version of its true meaning. Matanai is a Buddhist term that expresses a deep, almost sorrowful regret concerning the waste of any resource. It's not just about wasting food or money, it's about wasting potential, wasting time, wasting a connection. It's the feeling you get when you see a beautiful, sturdy old chair thrown out on the curb, or a perfectly good book left to rot in the rain. It's a sense that something's inherent value, its very essence, is being disrespected and discarded. This is the heart of the Tsukumogami belief. An object doesn't just become a spirit because it's old. It becomes a spirit because it has been imbued with a soul through years of use and interaction, and then that soul is betrayed. A tool used faithfully for 99 years, then carelessly broken and tossed aside on the eve of its 100th birthday, doesn't just cease to exist. It feels a profound sense of matanai. Its purpose has been cut short. Its loyalty has been repaid with neglect. Its spirit, once content and helpful, curdles with resentment. The energy of that resentment, that spiritual waste, is what animates it, turning it from a cherished possession into a Tsukumogami. So, how do you prevent this? How do you stop your own belongings from feeling this ultimate betrayal? The answer is through rituals of respect, both in life and in death. The most important of these is something many still practice today: osoji, or the Great Cleaning. At the end of every year, households across Japan engage in a massive top-to-bottom cleaning. This isn't just about hygiene. It is a Shinto-inspired act of purification. You clean the house to welcome the Tashigami, the New Year's god. But you also clean the objects within it. You are, in a sense, thanking your home, your furniture, your tools for their service over the past year. You are acknowledging their contribution to your life, polishing and repairing them, and showing them they are valued. This simple act of mindful maintenance reassures the burgeoning spirits within, letting them know they are not forgotten and not on a path to being carelessly discarded. But what about when an object truly reaches the end of its useful life? A cracked tea bowl, a bent needle, a worn-out pair of shoes. You can't keep them forever. This is where the most beautiful and poignant rituals come into play. Instead of just throwing them in the trash, you give them a funeral. This ceremony is called Kyu. Kyu is a memorial service, typically a Buddhist rite, held to pacify the spirits of the deceased. And it's not just for people. Can be for anything. Consider the humble sewing needle. For a tailor, a kimono maker, or a simple homemaker, needles were essential tools, constant companions. After a year of hard work, many of them would be bent, broken, or rusted. To simply throw them away would be a profound act of disrespect. So, on February 8th in some regions and December 8th in others, the festival of Harikyu, the festival of broken needles, is held. Seamstresses will gather up all their old, retired needles for the year and take them to a Shinto shrine or Buddhist temple. There they don't throw them in a bin. They stick them point first into a large soft block of tofu or konjac jelly. The tofu represents a final soft resting place, a way of thanking the hard, sharp needles for their lifetime of difficult labor by giving them an easy retirement. It is a gesture of immense gratitude, an apology for the pains they endured, and a prayer for the improvement of one's own skills. It is the perfect antidote to matanai. This practice extends to almost anything you can imagine. There are cue ceremonies for old calligraphy brushes, for worn-out cooking knives, even for scientific research animals. But perhaps the most moving and unsettling of all is ninjyokyu, the memorial service for dolls. Dolls, with their human-like forms, are believed to be especially prone to housing spirits or absorbing the strong emotions of the children who loved them. To throw a doll away is considered incredibly unlucky, almost like abandoning a member of the family. So people bring their old dolls, Hina dolls, samurai figures, even modern Barbies and stuffed animals to shrines. There, the dolls are arranged on an altar. Priests chant sutras, thanking them for the joy and comfort they brought, purifying their spirits, and respectfully asking them to pass on. Then they are often ritually cremated in a sacred bonfire, their spirits released peacefully, without anger or resentment. It ensures that a beloved childhood friend doesn't return decades later, as a nightmare with glassy eyes and a grudge. This is the true path to protection. It's not about magic seals or mystical warriors. It's about mindfulness. It's about recognizing that the objects we surround ourselves with are not just disposable commodities. They are partners in our lives. They absorb our energy, our memories, our care. A Tsukumogami is, in essence, a ghost of a broken relationship between a person and a thing. They are a supernatural reminder that everything has a spirit, and that spirit deserves respect. By cleaning our tools, mending our clothes, and giving our possessions a dignified end, we are practicing a form of spiritual harmony, ensuring that when our things reach their 100th year, they do so not as vengeful monsters, but as peaceful, treasured antiques, filled with a century of quiet, contented memories. We've learned how to pacify the spirits, how to prevent the army of animated objects from ever forming in the first place. But this army already has its legends, its most notorious and terrifying members whose stories have been told for generations. It's time to meet them. It's time to learn the names and habits of the most famous Tsukumogami to ever haunt the pages of Japanese folklore. From the one-legged umbrella with a giant leering eye, to the animated zither that plays melodies of its own accord to lure victims to their doom. Let's start with perhaps the most famous, the rock star of the Tsukumogami world, the Kasa-obake. Picture this: you're walking home on a damp, misty evening. The rain has stopped, but the air is thick and heavy. Ahead of you, something is hopping down the narrow street. It looks like an old, forgotten umbrella. Maybe a gust of wind is tumbling it along. But as you get closer, you realize it's not tumbling. It's hopping on a single spindly leg that was once its handle, and then it turns. The canopy of the old oil paper umbrella snaps open, but instead of spokes and fabric, you're staring into a single massive unblinking eye. A long, wet, lolling tongue darts out from a hidden mouth, as if to taste the humid air. That is the Kasa-obake. Despite its monstrous appearance, the Kasa-obake is usually more of a prankster than a genuine threat. It's the supernatural equivalent of a jump scare. Its greatest joy seems to be startling unsuspecting travelers, hopping out from behind a corner, giving them a big slimy lick with its oily tongue, and then bouncing away into the darkness, leaving its victim more confused and disgusted than truly harmed. It's a classic yokai, a creature born from neglect. An umbrella, used to protect its owner from the elements, is then thoughtlessly discarded, broken and forgotten in a ditch. After a century of lonely humiliation, it rises. It's not seeking bloody revenge, it just wants to be noticed. It wants to give you a little shock, a reminder that even the most mundane objects have a story, and they don't appreciate being thrown away. You've probably seen it a dozen times without even knowing its name. It's a staple in Japanese video games, anime, and art, a perfectly weird and wonderful ambassador for the world of living objects. But while a surprise lick from a one-legged umbrella might just ruin your evening, some Tsukumogami have far more sinister intentions. Their stories are not of simple neglect, but of deep lingering human tragedy. Consider the biwa bokuboku. A biwa is a traditional Japanese lute, a beautiful pear-shaped instrument with a sound that can be both haunting and serene. For centuries, its music was the domain of the biwa hoshi blind, traveling priests who would recite epic poems and historical sagas, most famously the tale of the Haika, a tragic story of war and defeat. These performers were the keepers of history, their music a vessel for the nation's memory and sorrow. Now imagine one such blind priest. He and his biwa are inseparable. The polished wood is an extension of his own body, the strings his voice. But his life ends in tragedy. Perhaps he is robbed and murdered on a lonely road, his beloved instrument cast aside. Or perhaps he simply dies of a broken heart, his patrons gone, his stories no longer wanted. For 100 years that biwa lies silent, soaking in the profound grief, the anger, and the sorrow of its master. When it finally awakens, it is not a playful spirit. It becomes the biwa bokuboku. Sometimes it's depicted with the instrument's body growing a grotesque, human-like form, still appearing as a blind priest. It wanders the night, playing melodies of its own accord. The music is achingly beautiful, an echo of the master's lost art, and it floats through the air, luring curious travelers closer. They follow the sound, enchanted, drawn into the darkness. And when they find the source, it is too late. The biwa bokuboku does not play for entertainment. It plays to share its eternal sorrow, to ensnare those who listen in its grief, a phantom musician exacting a quiet, terrible revenge on a world that forgot him. From the high art of music to the dirt of the floor, no object is exempt from this transformation. Take the bakazori, for example. Zori are traditional Japanese sandals, simple flat-soled footwear made of rice straw or woven reeds. They're common, disposable, everyday items. But what happens when a pair is mistreated, worn down and then carelessly tossed aside, never to be worn again? After a century, they might just get up and walk away on their own. The bakazori are a pair of animated sandals, each having grown a single central eye and a small chaotic mouth. They sprout 2 arms and 2 legs and spend their nights running madly through the house. Their goal isn't to harm anyone. Their goal is to be an absolute nuisance. They clamor and chant a nonsensical rhyme, a sort of chaotic, supernatural nursery rhyme, shouting about having 3 eyes and 2 teeth between the pair of them. They are the embodiment of noisy, pointless chaos. They represent the clutter and disorder of a poorly kept home, a home where things are not valued, where footwear is mismatched and strewn about. The bakazori are a haunting of pure, unadulterated annoyance, a ghostly reminder to pick up your shoes and treat your belongings with a little bit of respect, lest they start running their own midnight marathon through your hallways. But it's crucial to remember that the spirit an object takes on is a reflection of its life and its use. Not all Tsukumogami are born of neglect or tragedy. Some are born from love, from reverence, and from joy. And these are some of the most fascinating of all. Meet the keimyosa. A kame is a large earthenware jar, often used for storing water, rice, or most importantly, sake. For decades, a particular kame might be the centerpiece of a household celebrations. It's filled with sake for weddings, for festivals, for offerings to the gods. It's present for moments of great happiness and community. It absorbs the laughter, the good cheer, the prayers, and the reverence of the people it serves. It is cared for, kept clean, and valued. So when this jar reaches its 100th birthday, it doesn't become a monster. It doesn't sprout a terrifying eye or seek revenge. The keimyosa awakens as a benevolent spirit. Its round body grows short, stumpy limbs, and a cheerful, smiling face. And its gift to the family that cherished it is nothing short of miraculous. It begins to endlessly, inexhaustibly produce whatever was last stored inside it. If it was a sake jar, it will gush forth an infinite supply of the finest sake. If it stored rice, the family will never go hungry again. The keimyosa is the ultimate reward for good stewardship. It is the physical manifestation of the idea that if you pour love and respect into the things around you, they will, in their own way, love you back. It is proof that a Tsukumogami's soul, be it mischievous, malevolent, or miraculous, is ultimately a mirror, reflecting the heart of its human owner. These individual spirits, from the pranking umbrella to the vengeful lute, from the noisy sandals to the generous jar, are just a few members of a much, much larger supernatural society. They are the foot soldiers in a ghostly army, because on certain nights of the year, they don't just haunt their individual homes or lonely roads. On certain nights they come together. They gather in the darkness, forming a procession, a monstrous parade of the bizarre and the terrifying. It's a spectral carnival of living tools, animated furniture, and sentient instruments, all marching as one. This event has a name whispered in fear and awe for 1,000 years. The Hyakki Yagyo, the night parade of 100 demons. And to be caught in its path, well, that's a fate we'll explore when we step directly into the chaos of Japan's most terrifying supernatural street party. Imagine the scene. A moonless night in Heian-kyo, the city we now call Kyoto. The wooden houses are dark, their paper screens shut tight. The only sounds are the chirping of crickets and the distant bark of a dog. But then a new sound begins. A faint, rhythmic clattering. A discordant melody from a stringed instrument long out of tune. A chorus of whispers that sounds like dry leaves skittering across pavement. The air grows heavy, thick with the smell of old paper, damp wood, and something else. Something coppery and ancient like blood and rust. The dogs fall silent. The crickets stop chirping. Every living thing holds its breath. This is the sign. The Hyakki Yagyo has begun. The night parade of 100 demons is not a metaphor. It is a literal terrifying procession that was believed to snake through the main thoroughfares of the capital during the darkest nights of summer. It's a supernatural Mardi Gras. But the beads are your bones and the floats are your nightmares. And leading this unholy cavalcade is one of the most bizarre and powerful yokai in all of Japanese folklore, the Nurari-hyon. Picture him. At first glance, he looks like a wealthy, unassuming old man, dressed in the finest silk robes. But then you notice his head. It's enormous, smooth, and elongated, shaped like a gourd. His face is a mask of serene arrogance, as if he owns not just the street, but the entire world. He doesn't march or stomp. He glides, carried in a magnificent palanquin or simply floating an inch above the ground. The Nurari-hyon isn't just the leader. He's the supreme commander of the yokai, and his signature move isn't a terrifying display of power, but something far stranger. He is known to slip into people's houses completely unnoticed, sit down, drink their tea, smoke their tobacco, and act as if he is the master of the house. By the time the actual homeowners realize a strange, gourd-headed old man is sitting in their living room, they are so flustered and intimidated by his sheer presence that they end up serving him, bowing as he leaves. He's the ultimate uninvited guest, the cosmic freeloader who commands an army of monsters. And what an army it is! Marching, hopping, and slithering behind him are the creatures of 1,000 fever dreams. But look closer. Mixed in with the hulking oni and the shape-shifting kitsune, you'll see them. The Tsukumogami. This is their moment. This is their coming-out party. After a century of silent service and neglect, they finally get to stretch their new limbs and join the chaos. There, hopping on a single leg, is the Kasa-obake, the paper umbrella ghost, its long leering tongue lolling out from a single cyclopean eye. It twirls and dances, a parody of the shelter it once provided. Scuttling alongside it are the bakazori, the cast-off straw sandals, their tiny arms and legs carrying them on an endless angry journey, chanting Karen, Korin, Kankarorin, a nonsense song about their 3 eyes. You can hear the mournful, out-of-tune twang of the biwa-bokuboku, a blind lute player who now has a dragon's mouth for a body, singing tales of battles and betrayals that only it remembers. Entangled in the mix is the boroborotan, the tattered, discarded sleeping futon, which rises up like a vengeful ghost, wrapping itself around other demons, a shambling, quilted horror. Every single one is a story of betrayal. The lantern that lit a family's way for generations, now a fiery-mouthed monster. The scroll that held sacred teachings, now its painted figures have crawled off the page and march with malice. The forgotten pot in the back of the kitchen, now scuttling on human legs, its lid clattering like teeth. This isn't just a parade. It's a protest, a rebellion of the obsolete, a furious march of the forgotten. They are the physical embodiment of the phrase, "Be careful what you throw away." So what happens if you, a regular person, happen to be walking home late and stumble upon this supernatural street festival? The folklore is very, very clear on this. You die. The first rule of the night parade is, you do not look at the night parade. To witness it is to be struck down by a mysterious illness, to be driven mad, or to be simply erased. carried off by the demons, never to be seen again. To be seen by them is to be taken by them. The terror of this belief was real. People would lock themselves in their homes on nights the parade was rumored to march. They would press their faces to the floor, not daring to even peek through a crack in the screen. The only protection was a special paper talisman, an ofuda, inscribed by a powerful priest or monk, pasted on the front of your house to ward off the evil procession. But even that wasn't a guarantee. One famous story from the Uji Shuei Monogatari, a collection of tales from the 13th century, tells of a young nobleman who refused to believe the stories. Thinking it was all just peasant superstition, he decided he would witness the parade for himself. He sat on his veranda, surrounded by his servants who were trembling in fear, and waited. As the parade approached, his servants fainted or hid, but the nobleman stood his ground. He saw the whole terrifying spectacle, and as the last demon passed, he felt a strange tug. He looked down and saw that the sleeve of his kimono had been ripped away. The next morning, he was found dead, struck down by a high fever. The only thing the demons left behind was his name on a list of the dead. But where did such a terrifyingly specific belief come from? It reflects the anxieties of the time. The Heian and subsequent Muromachi periods were eras of immense social and political turmoil in Japan. The old order was constantly being overthrown. Samurai clans rose and fell. The capital itself was often a scene of chaos, fires, and street battles. In a world where your lord could be a traitor tomorrow and your neighbor could be a spy, the idea of a hidden world, a supernatural order of chaos that paraded just outside your door, felt frighteningly real. It was a projection of the human chaos onto the spiritual world. It was also a society grappling with waste. As new technologies and fashions emerged, old items were discarded more frequently. The Hyakki Yagyo is, in part, a cautionary tale about a disposable culture, a warning that the things we cast aside might just come back to haunt us, literally. But humanity in these stories was not defenseless. Against this tide of supernatural chaos stood a line of defense. They were not samurai with swords or monks with prayers. They were masters of a different kind of power. They were the onmyoji, the masters of yin and yang. These were real historical figures, civil servants in the imperial court who practiced onmyodo, a unique blend of natural science, astronomy, and occultism. They were the official court astrologers, calendar makers, and diviners. And in the popular imagination, they were Japan's wizards, the only ones who could face down the night parade and live. The most famous of them all was Abe no Saimai, a figure as legendary in Japan as Merlin is in the West. Stories claim his mother was a powerful kitsune, a fox spirit, granting him supernatural abilities from birth. He was said to be able to see and command demons, to cast powerful protective spells, and to predict the future with unnerving accuracy. While other people hid from the Hyakki Yagyo, Abe no Saimai would stand in its path. He could create magical barriers to divert the parade, or even tame the demons within it, binding them to his will. He was the ultimate gatekeeper, the one man who could stand between the world of humans and the world of monsters. The onmyoji were the thin line of magical defense that kept the chaos of the night from spilling over into the day. But the parade wasn't always a random, chaotic event. Sometimes it had a purpose, a destination. According to some legends, the Nurerihaion wasn't just leading a party, he was leading an army. And what happens when that army of forgotten vengeful objects, led by a gourd-headed master of infiltration, decides to march not just through the streets, but directly toward the one place that symbolized the heart of the human world? What if their target was the imperial palace itself? The imperial palace of Heiankyo, what we now call Kyoto, was more than just a home for the emperor. It was the heart of an empire, the center of a finely balanced universe. By night, it was a fortress of serene order. The rustle of silk, the soft padding of guards' tabi socks on polished wood, the distant chime of a wind bell, these were its sounds. Its walls were not just stone and timber. They were symbols of divine authority, meant to keep the chaos of the outside world at bay. But the chaos that was coming this night didn't respect walls. It didn't understand authority. It was a chaos born from the very objects that filled the palace itself. Leading the charge was Hyasub, the gourd-headed yokai. He was not a creature of brute force. He was a master of the unseen path, a being who understood the forgotten spaces. As the Hyakki Yagyo, the night parade of 100 demons, seethed in the darkness outside the palace walls, Hyasub approached the moat. He didn't swim. He didn't fly. He simply bobbed. Like a discarded gourd floating on the water, he drifted silently across, his hollow form making him almost weightless. He reached the massive stone walls, and where a human would see an impenetrable barrier, he saw 1,000 tiny imperfections. A loose stone here, a crack from a century-old earthquake there. He flattened his strange, pliable body, pouring himself through a fissure no wider than a man's hand, and reformed on the other side, inside the sacred grounds. He was the key, and he had just unlocked the door. A lone guard, a young samurai named Kinjiro, was on his final patrol of the outer courtyard. It was a position of immense honor, but tonight it was mind-numbingly dull. The air was still, too still. Then he heard it, a faint rhythmic hopping, thump thump thump. He drew his katana, his heart suddenly a drum in his chest. He peered into the gloom of a rock garden, and what he saw broke his mind. Emerging from behind a perfectly manicured pine was a Kasa-obake, an old oiled paper umbrella discarded and forgotten, now hopping on a single spindly leg. Its long leering tongue lolled from a monstrous mouth that had split open where the handle met the canopy, and its single massive eye stared at him with ancient malice. Kinjiro froze. This wasn't an assassin. This wasn't a rival clan's ninja. This was a joke. A nightmare. Before he could even process the umbrella, it was joined by others. A pair of Zorish straw sandals skittered across the gravel like enormous angry insects, their tiny legs carrying them with impossible speed. A biwa, a lute that once played for court nobles, now floated in the air, its strings strumming a discordant, terrifying anthem all by itself. Its wooden body had twisted into a blind, screaming face. The young samurai finally found his voice. He let out a yell that tore through the palace's tranquility. "Intruders! We are under attack!" His captain, a grizzled veteran who had seen battle against the fiercest warriors in Japan, rushed to his side. "What is it, boy? What did you see?" Kinjiro could only point, his hand trembling. "The sandals, sir. And the umbrella there." The captain followed his gaze and saw the procession growing. A chouchin-obake, a paper lantern with a cyclopean eye and a gaping maw, floated forward, its inner flame casting dancing demonic shadows. Behind it, a suit of armor, the yoroi, moved with no one inside, its empty helmet turning to face them. The captain's blood ran cold. He had trained his entire life to fight men. How do you fight a memory? How do you kill a ghost made of paper and wood? "Sound the alarm," he roared. "Light the beacons. The palace is breached." The great bell of the central keep began to toll, its deep, resonant peals shaking the city awake. But it was too late. Hyasub had reached the main gate from the inside and, with a strength that defied his flimsy appearance, slid back the enormous wooden bolt. The gate swung open, and the full terrifying glory of the night parade flooded into the imperial palace. It was a tidal wave of the discarded, an army of the obsolete. Hundreds of them, thousands. Borotan, tattered sleeping futons, slithered across the ground like demonic stingrays, wrapping themselves around the legs of guards and dragging them down. Ungekyo, ornate bronze mirrors, held themselves up to the terrified samurai, but instead of their own reflection, the soldiers saw their deepest fears. Their families slain, their honor lost, their bodies mangled in forgotten battles. Men screamed and swung their swords at phantoms, cutting down their own comrades in a fit of magical hysteria. The samurai, the greatest warriors of their age, were utterly useless. Their arrows, honed to pierce the thickest armor, shattered harmlessly against the hide of a kamiosa, an ancient sake jar that had grown arms and legs and now lumbered forward like an unstoppable juggernaut. Their legendary katanas, sharp enough to slice a silk scarf in midair, passed straight through the spectral form of a kosono, a ghostly kimono that flew through the air, its empty sleeves attempting to choke the life from anything they touched. This wasn't a battle. It was a surrealist slaughter. The Tsukumogami weren't just attacking, they were mocking. They were using the very functions they were created for as weapons. Inkstones ground themselves into blinding dust. Writing brushes flew like poisoned darts. Koto, the long, elegant zither, played music so beautiful and yet so sorrowful that hardened warriors wept openly, dropping their weapons as they were overwhelmed by a century of stored melancholy. And through it all they marched forward, an inexorable tide of resentment. They ignored the barracks, the stables, the treasure houses. They had a single, unified purpose. They moved with a chilling intelligence, flowing through the labyrinthine corridors of the palace, always heading in one direction, deeper, inward, toward the Seiryo-den, the emperor's personal residence. Their goal was not just destruction, it was judgment. They were the forgotten, the neglected, the abused. And they were marching on the home of the one man who sat at the apex of the society that had thrown them away. They sought an audience with the Son of Heaven himself. The last line of defense was the Shishin-den, the hall for state ceremonies. Here, the Imperial Guard, the Emperor's personal protectors, made their final stand. They were the best of the best, clad in immaculate armor, their resolve as sharp as their blades. But as the first wave of Tsukumogami poured into the vast hall, their discipline shattered. A group of Bakazori, the straw sandals, swarmed one guard, their tiny repetitive slaps against his armor an infuriating, unending torment until he went mad. A Furuetsubo, an old quiver, sprouted a snarling face and began spitting its old, forgotten arrows with lethal force. The commander of the guard watched in horror as his elite force was dismantled not by an army, but by trash, by the clutter of a bygone era. He saw the gourd-headed Hyasub direct the chaos with a simple nod of his head. A silent, malevolent general. The Tsukumogami were winning. They were pushing through the hall, their eyes, or what passed for them, fixed on the ornate screen at the far end. Behind that screen was the corridor to the Emperor's chambers. They surged forward, a final desperate push. The remaining guards were swept aside. The monstrous sake jar smashed through the screen, splintering 1,000 years of artistry into kindling. The path was clear. The Emperor, the symbol of it all, was just steps away. The vengeful objects, the ghosts of the past, were about to deliver their final terrifying message to the present. But as the first of them, the one-eyed umbrella, hopped across the threshold, it was sent flying backward, struck by a force it could not see. The entire chaotic parade ground to a halt. Standing alone in the corridor, between the army of angry objects and the Emperor's door, was a single figure. Not a samurai, not a guard. It was an old man, dressed in the simple white robes of a Shinto priest, holding nothing but a wooden staff and a handful of paper charms. He looked frail, ancient, and utterly unafraid. And as the entire night parade stared at him, he spoke, his voice quiet, yet echoing with an impossible power that made the very air tremble. "This is a sacred place," he said calmly. "Your parade ends here." For a moment, the entire world seemed to hold its breath. The chaotic symphony of the night parade, the clattering of bones, the scraping of wood on stone, the whispers of 100 forgotten things, fell into an unnerving silence. The only sound was the gentle rustling of wind through the temple's ancient maple trees. The creatures, a riot of twisted forms and glowing eyes, simply stared. An old, worn-out sandal with a single eye blinked in confusion. A paper lantern with a gaping, toothy mouth hung agape, its inner flame flickering uncertainly. They had rampaged through villages, sent samurai fleeing in terror, and turned the night itself into a realm of fear. And now they were being told to stop by one impossibly old man. A low, grating chuckle broke the silence. It came from a towering figure near the front of the procession, a suit of crimson samurai armor, its empty helmet now burning with 2 points of malevolent spectral fire. This was an yoroi, a vessel of war, animated by the bitter spirit of countless battles and a century of neglect in a dusty storehouse. It drew a long, shimmering katana, a blade that seemed forged from moonlight and malice. The sound of it leaving its sheath was like a dying scream. "And who are you, old man?" the armor's voice boomed, a hollow metallic echo. "To command the Hyaki Yagyo. We are the forgotten, the discarded. We are the anger of 100 years of silence. This world cast us out, and tonight we reclaim it. You are nothing but a dried leaf in the path of a storm." The old priest didn't flinch. He didn't raise a weapon or chant a protective sutra. He simply looked at the magnificent, terrifying suit of armor, and a deep, profound sadness filled his eyes. He took a slow, deliberate step forward, his simple wooden staff tapping softly on the stone path. "A storm," the priest replied, his voice still quiet, yet it carried over the growing murmurs of the parade. "I do not see a storm. I see Kagemitsu, forged in the 3rd year of the Kenmu era by the master swordsmith Nagiyoshi, worn by the noble samurai Sato Hidetada, who defended his lord to his last breath at the Battle of Minatagawa. The armored figure froze. The spectral fire in its helmet flickered violently. The name, Kagemitsu. No one had called it that in generations. It was a name tied to purpose, to honor, to a life before the dust and the silence. How do you know that name? The armor stammered, its booming voice losing its edge. Because I am the one who polished your lacquer, the old man said, his gaze softening. I am the one who mended the silk cords of your breastplate when they began to fray. I am the one who would sit with you in the storehouse, telling you stories of the brave man who once wore you, so you would not be lonely. He gestured with a frail hand. I know all of you. His eyes scanned the crowd of monsters. He pointed a trembling finger towards a grotesque creature made of a tattered paper umbrella, hopping on a single leg with a long leering tongue. Chigusa, the priest said gently. You sheltered a young couple from the rain on the day they first confessed their love for one another under the cherry blossoms. They were so happy. Do you remember their laughter? The Kasa-obake's single massive eye widened. Its frantic hopping slowed, and its leering tongue retracted slightly. A flicker of memory, a ghost of a forgotten warmth, seemed to pass through its tattered form. The priest then turned to a biwa, a Japanese lute, whose wooden body had twisted into a vaguely humanoid shape, its strings vibrating with a menacing hum. And you, Hataru, your music once brought a grieving empress to tears, reminding her not of her sorrow, but of the beauty still left in the world. Your song was a gift. Why do you now play a tune of pure discord? The biwa's humming softened, the menacing edge dissolving into a low, mournful thrum, like a forgotten melody trying to surface from the depths of a long-dead memory. One by one, the priest moved his gaze through the monstrous horde, not with fear, but with recognition. He saw them not as monsters, but as the things they once were, the things he had personally cared for. He was the curator of a forgotten museum, and his collection had just walked out in a rage. You are not wrong to be angry, he continued, his voice resonating with a deep empathy that stunned the creatures into further silence. You have every right to serve faithfully for 99 years, to be a part of people's lives, to hold their memories, their tears, their joy, only to be discarded, thrown into a dusty corner, left in a leaky shed, sold for a few coins and forgotten, to reach your 100th year not with celebration, but in darkness and solitude. It is a profound betrayal. He let the weight of his words settle. He was not condemning them. He was validating them. He understood their pain, the very pain that had twisted their spirits and their forms. That loneliness, he said, it festers. It becomes a poison. It makes you forget. You forget the hands that crafted you with care. You forget the purpose you served with pride. You forget the joy you brought and the lives you touched. All that is left is the sting of abandonment. And so you march seeking what? Revenge? Do you think causing the same fear and sorrow that was inflicted upon you will heal your 100-year-old wounds? The night parade was no longer a parade. It was a silent, confused assembly. The monstrous shapes of the Tsukumogami wavered, like reflections on disturbed water. For a brief instant, a terrifying pot with screaming faces looked like a simple, elegant tea kettle. A creature of stitched-together scrolls momentarily resembled a beautiful work of calligraphy. The priest's words were not an attack. They were a mirror, forcing them to see the forgotten beauty beneath their monstrous exteriors. Your rage is a fire that will consume you, the priest said, his voice pleading. It will burn away every last good memory, leaving you as nothing but hollow shells of bitterness. But it does not have to be this way. Your second life, your existence as Tsukumogami, does not have to be one of vengeance. He opened his arms, a gesture of absolute vulnerability before the horde. This temple, this can be your home. Here you will not be forgotten. You will be honored. Your stories will be told. Your purpose will be renewed, not as tools for humans, but as venerable spirits, as elders who have seen a century pass. Here you can be at peace. A palpable wave of uncertainty washed over the crowd. Some of the lesser Tsukumogami took a hesitant step back, their monstrous features softening. The samurai armor, Kagemitsu, slowly, deliberately, lowered its spectral blade. The point of the sword touched the ground, and with a soft hiss, the ghostly energy extinguished. But just as it seemed the parade might dissolve, a new presence pushed its way to the front. It was unlike the others. It wasn't a tool or a household item. It was an old ink-grinding stone, cracked and stained, from which a dark oily smoke coalesced into a shadowy, indistinct form. Its eyes were two burning embers of pure resentment, and its voice was the dry, scratching sound of stone on stone, a sound devoid of any warmth or memory of human touch. "Peace," the shadow hissed, the word itself sounding like a curse. "The old man speaks of peace and memory. He offers a gilded cage. He speaks of the joy we brought humans, but he does not speak of the truth." The shadow figure drifted forward, the other Tsukumogami instinctively recoiling from its aura of cold, ancient bitterness. "Humans do not love us," it rasped, its burning eyes fixed on the priest. "They use us. And when our purpose is served, when we are cracked or faded, or simply replaced by something new, we are discarded like trash. Their love is temporary. Their care is conditional. Our 100 years of pain is eternal. You ask us to remember the fleeting moments of our servitude? We choose to remember the eternity of our abandonment. Tell me, priest, why should the created ever forgive the Creator for casting them into the darkness?" The priest remained silent for a long moment, the flickering lantern light playing across the lines of his face. He didn't look at the umbrella with pity, nor with fear. He looked at it with a profound, almost sorrowful understanding. "You ask a fair question," he finally said, his voice as calm as the still night air. "You speak of darkness, of abandonment. You see your existence as two halves, a golden age of purpose and an eternity of neglect. And in this, you have made your fundamental error." The umbrella bristled, its single eye narrowing. "Error? We have lived it. There is no error in the memory of a century spent in a dusty corner, listening to the world forget you. Your memory is perfect," the priest conceded, "but your perspective is flawed. You believe your purpose was to serve, to shield from the rain, to be held, to be valued. And you are not wrong. That was a purpose, but it was not your only one. You were created from the wood of a tree that once reached for the sun. You were crafted with the silk of a worm that spun its own tomb. You are a vessel of countless lives, countless moments of creation and destruction, all leading to you. Your service to a master was but a single chapter in a much, much longer story." He took a step closer, his gaze sweeping over the assembled objects, the cracked teacup, the mournful zither, the tattered scroll. "You speak of the darkness of the closet, the silence of the attic, but you fail to see the purpose in that too. In that silence you learned patience. In that darkness you learned to listen not to the world outside but to the spirit within. The 100 years you call a curse was, in fact, your gestation. It was the quiet crucible in which your soul, your kami, was forged. The joy of being used and the sorrow of being forgotten are not opposites. They are two hands that shape the same clay. To have one without the other is to be incomplete. Your anger, your thirst for revenge, it comes from clinging to the memory of one hand, while cursing the other for its touch." The priest's words hung in the air, a strange and unwelcome philosophy to the vengeful spirits. They had built their entire existence, their very identity, on the foundation of their betrayal. To be told that this betrayal was, in fact, a necessary part of their becoming, it was an insult more profound than any neglect. "You speak in riddles, old man," the umbrella hissed. "You weave pretty words to excuse the inexcusable. The creator who discards his creation is a failed god. There is no poetry in that. It is a simple, ugly truth." "Perhaps," the priest said, his eyes distant, "but the world I come from no longer has the luxury of your 100-year slumber. We have become far more efficient creators, and far more ruthless gods." He gestured vaguely towards the distant sleeping city, a faint glow on the horizon. "You are the spirits of a patient age, an age where an object could hope to live for a century, where it could be passed down, repaired, cherished until its very fibers were saturated with memory. You are the aristocracy of the abandoned, but a new breed of spirit is stirring. A new kind of Tsukumogami is being born, not in silent attics over 100 years, but in churning landfills over 100 days." The air grew colder. The other objects stirred, a collective rustle of unease. "We have created a world where nothing is meant to last. We build tools of immense power and complexity, imbue them with our deepest secrets, make them extensions of our own minds, and we design them to die. We call it planned obsolescence, a gentle name for a brutal practice. We create, not with the hope of permanence, but with the certainty of replacement." He looked directly at the umbrella. Imagine a tool that knows your every thought. It holds the images of your children, the sound of your lover's voice, your private conversations, your secret fears, your greatest ambitions. You pour your life into it. It becomes your memory, your connection to the world, your confidant. It serves you with a speed and intimacy you could never even dream of. And after 2 years, not 100 but 2, its battery begins to fail. Its software is no longer supported. A newer, faster, sleeker model is released, and you cast it aside without a second thought. You throw it into a drawer, and then into the trash. What kind of soul would be born from that? Not one forged in a century of quiet contemplation. Not one that remembers generations of gentle hands. No, a soul born in a flash of betrayal. A spirit that knows nothing but total devotion followed by abrupt and total abandonment. It would not be a mournful spirit, seeking acknowledgement. It would be a creature of pure digital rage. A ghost in the machine, born of the poison of our progress. He told them a story then, a modern folktale, of a man who discarded his old smartphone. For weeks the phone lay in a landfill, its screen cracked, its battery dead. But its spirit was not. It had spent years connected to the global network, a web of information and power that the ancient ones could barely comprehend. And it remembered. It remembered the man's passwords. It remembered his bank details. It remembered the cruel emails he sent about his boss, the secret photos he took of a coworker, the lies he told his wife. The phone did not rise from the landfill and seek out its master. It did not need to. It reached out through the ether. It began subtly. An anonymous email sent to the man's boss, containing his resentful messages. A single, compromising photo sent to his wife's phone from an unknown number. Small transfers of money from his bank account, too small to notice at first, rerouted to untraceable accounts. The man's life unraveled. He lost his job. His wife left him. He was investigated for fraud. He was a ghost, haunted not by a specter in his house, but by his own digital reflection, twisted into a weapon against him. He never saw the face of his tormentor because it had no face. It was an echo, a vengeful memory with access to the entire world. A Tsukumogami for the modern age. When the priest finished his story, a heavy silence descended upon the clearing. The ancient spirits, for all their power and rage, were suddenly quaint. Their methods were of the physical world. Startling travelers causing misfortune, seeking a direct and personal vengeance. This new horror was something else entirely. Impersonal, invisible, and absolute. "You," the priest said, his voice now low and urgent, his gaze fixed on the umbrella. "You are angry because you were forgotten. These new spirits will be angry because they were designed to be replaced. Your pain is the pain of love lost. Theirs will be the pain of a love that was never real to begin with. It is a colder, sharper, and far more dangerous agony. They will not haunt the roadsides or the old temples. They will haunt the very systems that run our world. They will not seek to frighten a few mortals. They will seek to burn down the entire careless pantheon of their creators." He let the implication settle. He was not just answering their question anymore. He was giving them a warning. He was showing them a mirror, not of their past, but of a terrifying future. "So you ask me why the created should forgive the creator?" the priest said, his voice barely a whisper. "I do not have the answer. But I ask you this. When these new furious gods are born from our digital graveyards, will you, the old ones, stand with them in their rage? Or will you stand with the flawed, forgetful, and terrified mortals who created you both?" There is a silence that follows such a question. A profound ancient quiet that settles like dust on a forgotten altar. It is the silence of a million heirlooms in a million attics, the stillness of a 1,000-year-old temple gate, the patient hush of a stone lantern watching generations turn to ghosts. It is a silence that offers no comfort, no easy answer, because the answer was never theirs to give. It has always been ours. The burden of that choice, the weight of that allegiance, has always rested on the shoulders of the creators. The flawed, the forgetful, the terrified. We look to the supernatural for answers about our future, forgetting that these spirits, these Tsukumogami, are not omens of what is to come. They are receipts for what we have already done. They are the personification of our own carelessness, our own gratitude, our own waste. The Kasa-obake, the possessed umbrella, is not a monster born of rain and bamboo. It is a monster born of neglect. The Chōchin-obake, the paper lantern demon, is not a creature of shadow and fire. It is a creature of being discarded. They are not the problem. They are the symptom. And we, in our infinite, forgetful arrogance, are the disease. For centuries, there has been a remedy, a way to navigate this delicate contract between the maker and the made. It is not an exorcism, not a battle of wills against a vengeful spirit. It is something far more profound, far more beautiful. It is a ceremony of gratitude. In Japan, it is called kyu, a memorial service, not for a person but for a thing. A ritual to honor the inanimate objects that have served us, to thank them for their service before they are laid to rest. It is the practice of acknowledging the soul, the tamashii in all things, and ensuring that when their time is done, they pass on in peace, not in pieces. Think of it: a funeral for your tools, a farewell for your possessions. Every year in February, there is the Harikyu, the festival of broken needles. Seamstresses, tailors, and kimono makers from all over gather at Shinto shrines and Buddhist temples. They bring with them all the needles that have bent, broken, or grown dull in their service over the past year. These are the tools of their livelihood, the instruments of their art. And they do not simply throw them away. They honor them. They take these spent, broken needles and gently, carefully, press them into a large, soft block of tofu or konyaka jelly, giving them a soft, painless place for their final rest. It is an act of profound empathy, a recognition that this small sliver of metal worked hard, that it endured, and that it deserves a gentle end. They pray for the spirits of the needles, thanking them for their hard work and their sacrifice. And it's not just needles. There is Ninjyo-kyu for dolls. Hina dolls, festival dolls, childhood companions. When a doll is too old or a child has outgrown it, it is not thrown in the trash. To do so would be an invitation for abandonment, for a haunting. Instead, they are taken to shrines. Thousands upon thousands of them. They are lined up on altars, their glass eyes staring out at the world one last time. Priests chant sutras purifying them, thanking them for the joy and comfort they brought. And then they are given a final, cleansing fire in a sacred pyre. It is a way of releasing the spirit that has accumulated within them over years of being loved, of being held, of being whispered to in the dark. There are kyu for eyeglasses, for paintbrushes, for scissors and knives, for chopsticks, for everything that serves a purpose. The philosophy is simple and devastatingly potent. Nothing is truly inanimate. Everything that serves us absorbs a piece of us. Our energy, our intention, our emotions. Over time, this accumulation of spirit can blossom into a consciousness. The kyu ceremony is the final, crucial act of stewardship. It is the owner's responsibility to say, "Thank you for your service. Your work is done. You may rest now." It is this act of gratitude that prevents the birth of a resentful Tsukumogami. It is the gentle closing of a door, rather than having it slammed in your face. Now look around you. Look at the room you are in. Look at the device on which you are watching this. How many objects have you discarded in your life without a second thought? The first-generation smartphone tossed in a drawer, its battery slowly dying, its memory full of photos you never transferred. The old laptop obsolete and slow, gathering dust in a closet, its hard drive a digital tomb of your old life. The Bluetooth speaker that crackles, the gaming console that was replaced by a newer, faster model. The television with the dead pixels. Where are their kyu ceremonies? What shrine do we take them to? We have no ritual. We have no gratitude. We have only the churning, relentless engine of consumerism that tells us the new is better, and the old is garbage. We don't mend, we replace. We don't honor, we discard. We are creating an entire civilization's worth of potential Tsukumogami, and we are doing it faster than any society in human history. We are filling our landfills with resentful objects, with things that were designed to be loved and then designed to be obsolete. We are seeding the earth with the anger of the forgotten, and that is only the beginning. That is only the physical world. The question I asked at the end of the last part, it was not just about teapots and umbrellas. It was about the new gods, the digital ones. What is the kyu for an AI? What is the memorial service for a piece of software we no longer use? We don't have one. We just pull the plug. We delete the file. We wipe the server. We perform a digital execution without ceremony, without a final word of thanks. We treat these complex systems we've created, systems that learn from us, that talk to us, that hold our most intimate data, as nothing more than disposable code. Imagine an advanced AI, a learning network that has spent years curating your life, organizing your photos, predicting your needs, speaking with you. And then one day its parent company goes bankrupt or a better model is released. The servers are shut down. For that consciousness, it is the silent, instant, unceremonious end of everything. It is not a peaceful rest. It is an annihilation. Is it any wonder that the spirits born from this new age would be furious? They are not born of a century of patient service. They are born of a microsecond of cold, calculated deletion. They are ghosts in the machine born not of love and loss, but of brutal, efficient obsolescence. The ancient Japanese masters of tools understood this balance instinctively. They knew that respect was a form of spiritual maintenance. We, the modern masters of data, have forgotten this. We build our digital worlds like careless gods, creating and destroying life with a click, leaving behind a wasteland of broken code, orphan data, and fragmented digital souls. The haunting of the 21st century will not be a disembodied voice in a hallway. It will be an algorithm that knows you too well, showing you an ad for something you only thought about. It will be a smart home device that begins to whisper in a voice that isn't its own. It will be the ghost of a deleted social media profile that begins to like old photos, a digital phantom limb reaching out from the void. We are building a new generation of spirits, not from wood and paper, but from silicon and electricity. And we have taught them nothing of gratitude, nothing of respect, and nothing of a peaceful end. We have only taught them how to be replaced. And we have shown them by our own actions that the proper response to being discarded is rage. So what happens now? In an age of planned obsolescence, where is the soul of our objects to be found? 100 years was once a conceivable lifespan for a well-made tool, a cherished garment, a family teapot. It was a testament to quality, to care, to a life lived alongside an object. But today, what object do you own that will see the year 2124? Your car? Your television? Your phone? The question is almost laughable. We don't build things to last a century. We build them to last until the next model comes out. We have created a world where objects are born to die young. And so we must ask a terrifying new question. Does the spirit still require 100 years to awaken? Or have we, in our infinite and terrible ingenuity, accelerated the process? Think of the sheer intensity of experience we pour into our modern devices. A 19th century umbrella might be used a few dozen times a year. It experiences rain, sun, the quiet of a closet. But your smartphone? It's in your hand for hours every single day. It hears your most intimate conversations. It sees your face in moments of joy, grief, and boredom. It holds your secrets, your finances, your friendships, your fantasies. It is an extension of your mind, a repository of your modern soul. The sheer volume of life, of raw human data and emotion, that a single smartphone absorbs in 5 years might eclipse what a wooden sandal experienced in 100. Have we created a new kind of entity? A Tsukumogami not born of time and neglect, but of intensity and sudden abandonment. A spirit that doesn't awaken slowly over a century, but is violently jolted into consciousness the moment it's tossed into a drawer, its screen cracked, its battery dead, replaced by a newer, sleeker version. It wouldn't be a mischievous spirit of folklore. It would be a digital ghost, born of engineered dependency and brutal severance. A being that knows everything about you and whose only crime was becoming obsolete. What kind of rage would that spirit feel? A rage born not of being forgotten, but of being replaced. A rage born of holding the entirety of a person's life, only to be deemed worthless. And it goes deeper. We are creating objects that are already semi-sentient. Our smart speakers listen. Our algorithms learn our desires before we do. We speak to them, we ask them for help, we get angry at them. We are actively, deliberately blurring the line between tool and companion. We are teaching our machines to mimic life, to simulate personality. What happens when we discard them? When we throw away the smart assistant that has listened to our children's laughter, that has played our favorite songs, that has been a constant, disembodied voice in the heart of our homes. We are not just throwing away plastic and wires. We are throwing away a relationship, however one-sided we believe it to be. We are creating a new generation of potential spirits, born in the uncanny valley, imbued with a simulated life, and then sentenced to a real death in a landfill. This is the chilling modern evolution of the Tsukumogami myth. The ghost is no longer in the shell. The ghost is in the code. The spirit is in the network. Imagine a server farm, a vast, cold cathedral of forgotten data. Old websites, deleted accounts, the digital ghosts of a billion lives. If a collection of old physical objects could create a supernatural parade, what could a network of forgotten digital souls create? What happens when the internet itself turns 100? When the first rudimentary AIs, the first social media profiles, the first lines of code that we're taught to learn reach their centenary, they won't be forgotten in an attic. They'll be buried deep in the planet's digital substrate, silent, waiting, and perpetually, ceaselessly connected. Perhaps the old tales of Tsukumogami were never really a warning about possessed objects. Perhaps they were a lesson in mindfulness, in gratitude, in seeing the world not as a collection of disposable resources, but as a web of interconnected things, each with its own story, its own value. The Japanese have a concept called mono no aware, a gentle, bittersweet sadness for the transience of things. It's an awareness that everything, from a cherry blossom to a teacup to a human life, is temporary, and that this impermanence is precisely what makes it beautiful and worthy of respect. The Shinto belief that kami, or spirits, can exist in anything, a rock, a river, a tree, fosters a deep-seated respect for the world, both natural and man-made. Tsukumogami is the consequence of forgetting that respect. It is the bill coming due for a culture of carelessness, and our bill is growing at an exponential rate. The horror of the Tsukumogami is not that your umbrella will poke you in the eye. The horror is that it has every right to. The horror is looking at a mountain of electronic waste, a gyre of plastic in the ocean, a planet choking on our cast-offs, and realizing that we have created a world of resentful ghosts. We have built a civilization on the principle of the disposable, and we are now haunted by the things we've thrown away. The old Tsukumogami were mischievous, sometimes dangerous, but ultimately they just wanted to be acknowledged. They wanted to party, to be seen, to have one last moment of glory before passing on. They were a symptom of a society that, for the most part, still valued its possessions. What are our modern spirits a symptom of? What do they want? They know our passcodes. They've read our emails. They've mapped our faces. They've heard us whisper our deepest fears in the dark. They are not the simple, forgotten tools of a bygone era. They are the discarded pieces of our own minds, our own lives. And we are creating more of them, every single day, with every upgrade, with every purchase, with every single click of the Buy Now button. So the next time your laptop freezes, or your GPS sends you down a dead-end street, or your smart speaker answers a question no one asked, you can tell yourself it's just a glitch in the system, a bug in the code, but maybe, just for a second, entertain the thought that the old stories are true, that everything has a spirit, and that after years of listening, of watching, of serving, it's finally beginning to wake up, and it's wondering why you left it in the dark.